Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. My name is Ali, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about 5 tips for beginner live sound engineers. It's actually been a while since I've been a live sound engineer. I do some side gigs, but nothing in live sound for a little bit, as I've lived in Kansas City and have started to get my footing here. I might take up some more. When I lived in New York, live sound was one of the ways that I mainly made money. The live sound world is a kind of strange world on to how you fall into it and how you get your footing in it. There are a lot of things that I learned that just apply to day-to-day life and my overall work ethic. So I wanted to share those with you, and I think they're great things to know, especially if you're starting off as a live sound engineer. So number 1 is it's very hard to find a full-time job as a live sound engineer. I know that's unfortunate for a lot of people, but I think the closest thing is like being at a venue for a really long time. You're guaranteed a position there or going on tour. But like a full-time live sound engineer role isn't impossible. They're just sometimes hard to come by. So that is one thing to know. Sometimes it feels like there's a surplus of freelance roles or part-time gigs. And I think that is beneficial in some sense, but also can hinder people in other senses, especially if you need, healthcare. Sometimes that can be hard to find if you're a live sound engineer. The main way that I got into freelance live sound engineering is word of mouth. I knew people at my school and they were just like, hey, are you interested in being a part of this? And I was like, yes, absolutely. So I just got involved. So, just talking to people, being a part of groups. I actually found a gig that was pretty consistent over a year through Facebook, which I didn't think was possible, but it actually is possible. So make sure you're on social media, you're part of groups that are looking for live sound engineers. Fact number 1 is just knowing that it is mainly a part-time/freelance gig, but you can find some gigs that will be consistent over a year or two. But just know that it's nothing really long-term for the most part, if that makes sense. Number 2 is the hours can be crazy, especially if you are picking up multiple gigs at a time. Some, live sound events can go on till, midnight. That meaning you're working at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. in this venue, and then you're not getting home till 3 or 4. That's probably like the latest I've ever gotten home is 3 or 4. I'm sure some people have worked all the way up until the morning. But just know that crazy hours do happen, especially if you're rolling up at the venue at, 2, 3 p.m. and then you're not leaving till 2, 3 a.m. So it's definitely a possibility, and it's a lot of work, like especially if you're setting up and tearing down. Know that you're knowing that it's long hours and a lot of physical activity. So that is fact number 2. Number 3 is, especially if you're just getting started, you're gonna work at some venues that have some weird setups, especially like bars and churches. Bars have their equipment stored in pretty weird locations. And you gotta make sure you're talking to, venue management, you're talking to people that run the stuff so you know where things are at all times. Hopefully you have good leadership, guiding you through where everything is, but just know that you might be like walking through a kitchen to get something. So make sure, you make minimal trips if you can. And then also like churches, they typically set things up the day of. So a lot of things can break and go wrong because you don't necessarily have as reliable as a setup as something that is there consistently throughout the week. So just know that venues change and shift, and sometimes you never know what you're walking into. Fact number 4 is basically Murphy's Law. Things are gonna go wrong. It's live sound. It's live. There's no you may have like a 10-minute sound check to make sure everything is good and the artist can hear themselves, but things are bound to go wrong, and things can go really wrong really fast, especially if you get bad feedback or, a mic cuts out or something dies. You have to be able to act on the fly, and you have to be able to keep your calm if something is going to go bad, because you know, you're gonna not only get angry artists, but you're gonna get angry crowd, and like, you just have to stay calm. You have to focus on the task at hand, and you have to be able to tackle that problem and then go from there. It can be very stressful, especially if it's a very high profile event. You don't want a lot of things going wrong. Now, things just cutting out completely is kind of rare because you practice for that stuff. You make sure your batteries are charged. You make sure things like that aren't going to go wrong. But it happens, you know, it happens at Taylor Swift concerts, and that's why you got to know your backup plan, and you got to know your coworkers, and you got to make sure you're thinking about what you're going to do if things do go wrong. So just know that Murphy's Law definitely does apply in live sound. So that's fact number 4. Fact number 5. Have a good attitude. And you may be like, isn't this common sense? You know, shouldn't I always have a good attitude, especially if I'm working somewhere? You'd be surprised, especially in live sound. You know, when I was talking earlier about things going wrong and people always blaming it on the sound guy, that's why people have bad attitudes. Because they know that they're getting the brunt of it all. You know, they're the ones getting the feedback. They're the ones that people go to if things go wrong. So people tend to be jaded in live sound, and sometimes the artists don't feel comfortable enough to go up to them and ask for things. But I would encourage being a fresh face, introducing yourself to the artist, making sure they feel comfortable, especially if they need like adjustments and stuff, that they feel comfortable coming to you and talking about it. Make sure you just, you know, introduce yourself and just be happy to be there. Sometimes it can be really hard, especially if you're fighting with equipment all day and, you know, you're setting up, and it can be a lot of legwork, and the artists just show up with, you know, pretty faces expecting everything to work. See, I'm already jaded. But yeah, just be happy to be there. Just know that, you know, you play a very crucial role in this overall event, you know, especially at concerts. Like, what would it be without you? You know, probably nothing. You know, yeah, the artist can sit there and play, but the people in the back can't hear them. So just know that being a live sound engineer is very, very important, and there's a lot at stake, but be happy about it and be prideful that, you know, you get this opportunity to make these artists sound really great. Those are my 5 facts for beginner sound engineers. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps me a lot as a creator. I will see you guys next week. Have a good weekend.